Nobody saw it coming. For months, Captain Ibrahim Traoré had been silent about his next move. Western analysts speculated he was planning more military operations or political maneuvers. African critics whispered that Burkina Faso, a landlocked nation facing multiple challenges, had no time for dream projects. But Traoré was thinking differently. He was thinking decades ahead. Hidden under layers of secrecy, on a vast stretch of dry land outside Ouagadougou, construction crews were already at work. Bulldozers roared through the early mornings while trucks carried materials day and night. But this wasn't a military base, as Western drones first suspected. This was something far more daring, a vision to build the biggest football academy in Africa, one that would shock not just the continent but the entire world. Traoré called it Project Renaissance 11. He believed Africa's future was not in foreign loans, not in endless political summits, but in its young people. If we want a powerful Africa, he reportedly told his cabinet, we must invest in the minds and talents of our children. Football is not just a game, it's a global language. Through football, we will show the world what Africa can build, on its own terms. From the start, this was no ordinary academy. Traoré envisioned something beyond training grounds. He wanted a world-class sports city, a place where the next generation of African football stars would rise, but also where they would receive an education that prepared them to lead beyond the pitch. The plans included 8 international standard pitches, 4 with natural grass and 4 with advanced synthetic turf. A high-performance sports science lab, with rehabilitation pools, advanced gym facilities, and injury prevention technology used by top European clubs. A boarding school for 200 young players, with a Pan-African curriculum, multilingual classes, and mentorship programs led by African football legends. A solar-powered mini-stadium, capable of holding 20,000 fans for youth tournaments, with eco-friendly designs and modern broadcast facilities. Scholarship programs for underprivileged kids across all 54 African nations, including conflict zones like Mali, Sudan, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. But here's what truly stunned everyone: Traoré refused foreign loans. There was no FIFA grant, no partnership with former colonial powers, and no Western charity. The entire project was funded through internal revenue, particularly from the restructuring of Burkina Faso's mining sector. Gold profits, which had long benefited foreign corporations, were redirected straight to this mega youth project. Construction was halfway done, yet the world still had no idea. Local workers, many of whom were former jobless youths, worked around the clock. Traoré himself visited the site in plain clothes to check progress, often talking directly with engineers and architects. This academy is not just for Burkina Faso, he said one evening, standing on a dusty pitch under construction. It is for every African child who dreams of being great. The secrecy surrounding the project was strategic. Traoré knew that once the news broke, global powers would try to sabotage it through negative media coverage, sanctions, or political pressure. But he had a team of loyalists who ensured no leaks occurred. Even the name Project Renaissance 11 was chosen to mislead outsiders into thinking it was some sort of military plan. Everything changed when satellite images leaked online. A Western defense analyst, studying Burkina Faso for unrelated reasons, noticed large rectangular green fields appearing in the desert. Initially, they assumed it was a hidden military training ground. But a curious journalist cross-referenced the images with construction permits, and that's when the truth began to surface. In early 2025, social media exploded. What is Captain Traoré building? Burkina Faso constructing Africa's biggest football academy? This can't be real, it's propaganda. But when drone footage of the near-complete facility went viral, even skeptics had to admit this was something different. The football pitches gleamed under the sun, the dormitories were modern, and the solar panels covering the rooftops were a clear symbol of self-reliance. The Western media didn't know how to spin it. Some outlets tried to downplay it, calling it a costly gamble. Others feared what it represented: an African nation proving it could build a billion-dollar sports project without begging foreign nations for support. For many Africans, however, it was a symbol of hope. Ordinary people from Ghana to Kenya began sharing the footage with pride. Young footballers in Lagos and Dakar dreamed of one day stepping onto those pitches. Traoré, however, remained silent. He didn't rush to claim glory. Instead, he sent a short, powerful message through state television. This project is not about me. It's about Africa standing tall and creating opportunities for its children. We have begged enough. Now we build for ourselves. That statement sent shockwaves across the continent. For the first time in a long time, young Africans felt that their leaders could create something tangible, something inspiring, without strings attached. But this was just the beginning. Nobody knew that Project Renaissance 11 was about to change not only football but the way the world viewed Africa itself. When the world finally realized what Captain Ibrahim Traoré was building, it was already too late to stop it. At first, the leaked satellite images looked like something from a sci-fi movie: massive green rectangles, perfect lines, stadium lights, and symmetrical structures in the middle of dry Burkina Faso. Many assumed it was a military compound. After all, why would Burkina Faso, a landlocked, low-income country under military rule, be building anything this massive, and in secret? But within days, amateur analysts matched the site layout to FIFA-standard football fields. Zoomed-in drone shots revealed goalposts, running tracks, dormitory blocks, and even the outline of a stadium. The internet blew up. Africa's sports bloggers were the first to piece it together. Traoré is building the largest football academy on the continent. Maybe even the world. Mainstream media scrambled for answers. France 24 called it mysterious. CNN labeled it a controversial project. The BBC asked, "Is this a football dream or political theatre?" But nothing they said could erase the truth. Captain Traoré was executing a plan no African leader had ever dared. Build Africa's future with African money, on African land, without foreign permission. International sports journalists flew into Ouagadougou, expecting chaos. What they found shocked them. The academy wasn't a half-baked vanity project, it was a fully planned sports city. A multilingual tour guide led them through air-conditioned classrooms filled with kids from 15 African countries. Top-tier medical facilities with African doctors trained in sports science. Coaches from Ghana, Senegal, and even Brazil, mentoring kids as young as 10. Computer labs teaching sports data analytics, video review, and tactical programming. And then came the bombshell: Project Renaissance 11 was already training over 300 young athletes, all on scholarships, many of them from war-torn or impoverished backgrounds. The goal wasn't just to create athletes, it was to create Pan-African leaders, thinkers, and disciplined young minds who would never again look to Europe for permission to dream. The Western press was forced to change its tone. The narrative switched from strange military regime project to a potential game-changer for African youth development. But behind closed doors, the shock ran deeper. Traoré had achieved in 18 months what most governments couldn't do in 10 years. No IMF debt. No Chinese contracts. No corrupt foreign consultants. Instead, he had funded it using Burkina Faso's gold exports, especially from newly renegotiated mining contracts. Under his leadership, the state reclaimed control over key resources, funneled the profits directly into national development, and cut wasteful bureaucracies. To make matters even more unpredictable, Traoré sent personal invites to 10 African football legends to visit the academy. And one by one, they came. Didier Drogba walked the grass barefoot and whispered, "This is holy ground." JJ Okocha danced with the kids, tears in his eyes. Samuel Eto'o, visibly emotional, told reporters, "This is what Africa has been waiting for. This is independence." All of them agreed to serve as advisors and mentors, helping the academy develop a Pan-African training model not just focused on European football tactics, but African identity, creativity, and pride. That's when European football clubs started getting nervous. Scouts from PSG, Arsenal, and Bayern Munich began flying into Burkina Faso, trying to sign the academy's top talents early. But the Traoré government passed strict regulations. No player shall be signed to any foreign club until the age of 18. All contracts must pass through a Pan-African legal board to prevent exploitation. This move alone caused a ripple effect. Agents who had made careers off signing African kids at 14 and shipping them off with pennies were now locked out. Burkina Faso had become the first African nation to fully regulate football talent exports. And then came the political pushback. Whispers of sanctions emerged. International human rights organizations began publishing reports questioning the project's military links and child labor standards. But none of the young players spoke of abuse. Instead, they spoke of hope. One 13-year-old from northern Nigeria said, "Before this, I never wore Real football boots. I used to run barefoot in the sand. Now I have a coach, a bed, a book, and a dream." Traoré responded to critics in a calm but firm televised speech. Africa's children have been trafficked, exploited, and forgotten for too long. If building a safe place for them to grow, learn, and compete threatens old systems, then let those systems fall. By now, other African nations were taking notice. Delegations from Mali, Guinea, Chad, and even South Africa began visiting the academy, hoping to copy the model. The African Union asked for a briefing. ECOWAS leaders who once criticized Traoré now called him visionary. What was meant to be a small national project had become a continental revolution. And behind all the cameras, politics, and headlines, hundreds of children trained every morning at 6 a.m., read Pan-African literature in the afternoon, and dreamed not of escaping to Europe, but of building a future right there on African soil. Project Renaissance 11 is no longer a secret, it's a global symbol of African rebirth. From Accra to Addis Ababa, young footballers were now dreaming, not of fleeing to European academies, but of making it into Captain Ibrahim Traoré's groundbreaking football city. The academy had become more than just a sports center, it had evolved into a Pan-African movement. The very first class of graduates, over 60 boys and 30 girls from 20 different African countries, completed their full training cycle. But these were no ordinary players. They had been molded with a unique formula. Tactical training from top African and South American coaches. Political education rooted in Thomas Sankara, Kwame Nkrumah, and Patrice Lumumba. Mental resilience programs taught by former child soldiers turned peace advocates. Strict rules against foreign agent manipulation. Their slogan? Africa first. Football second. When Burkina Faso hosted the first Pan-African Youth Super Cup, the Academy's team, made up of young stars from Nigeria, Guinea, DRC, Sudan, and of course Burkina Faso, stunned everyone by dominating the tournament. They weren't just playing football. They were playing with purpose, pride, and strategy. The captain of the team, a 17-year-old from Sierra Leone nicknamed Konu 2.0, stood on the podium with the trophy and declared, "This is not about goals. This is about goals for Africa." That clip went viral across African TikTok, Twitter, and WhatsApp. The stadium in Ouagadougou was filled to capacity, and millions across the continent watched live broadcasts on newly created Pan-African sports networks funded by local African media investors, not Western conglomerates. Traoré had quietly changed the game. No more foreign dominance over African football dreams. No more early talent exports without dignity. No more sponsored narratives. Even FIFA had to take notice. They sent a delegation to inspect the academy and were shocked to find facilities matching or even exceeding those in top European clubs. The classrooms, the nutrition labs, the player lounges, the video analysis rooms all were designed with excellence and Afrocentric inspiration. When FIFA's lead delegate met with Traoré and asked if he was open to international partnerships, Traoré reportedly smiled and said, "Africa is not a project. It's a continent. And we're building it ourselves." By now, agents were desperate to get in. European clubs began flooding inboxes with million-euro offers. One 16-year-old midfielder from Mali received 5 trial invites from England, Germany, and Spain. His response? "I'll go, when I'm ready. But I won't be owned." This kind of talk terrified the European football market. For decades, African players had been underpaid, rushed out of their countries as teenagers, and locked into exploitative contracts. Now, thanks to Project Renaissance 11, a new generation of footballers understood their value and they had a home base strong enough to protect them. In an emotional twist, even African players in Europe began donating to the academy. Sadio Mané quietly sent $300,000 to fund scholarships. Riyad Mahrez offered to sponsor the girls' division. Victor Osimhen announced a joint tournament between his Lagos Academy and Renaissance 11. But the story didn't stop at football. The academy had also become a hub of cultural resistance. Poets, historians, and filmmakers were now part of the program. Weekly seminars featured topics like the legacy of Sankara and the role of the youth, football and anti-colonialism, why Africa must own its narrative. Young players wrote essays, directed minifilms, and even performed theatre pieces before matches. The world had never seen anything like this. Traoré, always strategic, then made another shocking announcement. A Pan-African Football League by 2028, made up entirely of academy teams from every African region, hosted in Burkina Faso, with African broadcasters, African referees, and African sponsorships. This wasn't just a league. This was a direct challenge to Europe's monopoly on the global game. The West couldn't hide its discomfort. Suddenly, news outlets began releasing concerns about the project, claiming brainwashing, military links, and lack of global oversight. But none of the students, reported anything negative. Instead, parents across Africa begged to have their children admitted. One mother from Somalia said during an interview, "My son was almost taken by traffickers last year. Today, he speaks English, French, Arabic, and can dribble like Messi. This academy saved him." At the end-of-year closing ceremony in 2026, Captain Ibrahim Traoré stepped onto the stadium stage. Tens of thousands were in attendance. Millions watched online. With a soft voice and steel in his tone, he said, "They told us we couldn't build without them. They told us we were too poor, too broken, too unstable. Today, I see young Africans smiling, reading, dreaming, and winning. This academy is proof that Africa doesn't need saviors. Africa just needs a chance. We gave ourselves that chance." The crowd erupted. Flags of every African nation flew in the stands. A choir of young boys and girls sang in 12 languages. It wasn't just a football academy anymore. It was a revolution. Captain Ibrahim Traoré didn't just build fields and stadiums, he built belief. In a world where Africa is too often told what it can't do, he showed what happens when we stop asking for permission. Project Renaissance 11 is not the end, it's just the first whistle of Africa's next half. And the world? They'll have no choice but to watch. Subscribe for more untold African victories.